Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
And
And
at the outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee and especially Professor Suzanne for inviting me to participate in the conference on this important aspect. I'm Mirambika Mahapatro. I'm a professor at National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, New Delhi, India. So when I heard about this topic, violence against men, when Professor Suzanne talked to me about it, I was thinking I don't have much idea about or the literature on this issue. And moreover, I have been working in the area of violence against women. Although I have been hearing quite a lot in the past few years, and then I decided, I must search for the scientific literature and published materials. So I believe that um, one should look into both the aspect, violence against men as well as against women. And dialogue of such nature is very, very important. So here I'm talking about violence against men, fragmented commission of patriarchy. What do I mean by fragmented commission of patriarchy? In India, the impact of patriarchy is not directly visible. We try to see women and we don't see actually, men ever facing any kind of violence. So it is probably after the LGBTQ protest and their rights in India, we try to recognize and feel that men also may be suffering from violence. So I cannot move it. Yeah. So therefore, my talk today would be, focusing on throwing lights on the individual and institutional consequences of exclusive law protecting women and neglecting men's rights, and critically challenges the philosophical genesis of patriarchy by highlighting emerging situation wherein men have been victimized within the overarching realm of patriarchy. It also emphasizes the traditional gender bias and stereotype challenging gender identities. And I have taken a quote from one of the book, Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It speaks that they seek to realize the human rights of all and to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. We are determined to end poverty and hunger in all their forms and dimensions, and to ensure that all human beings can fulfill their potential in dignity and equality and in healthy environment. Therefore, this paper is an effort to, underline the human rights perspective surrounding gender neutrality in protecting equal rights for all. It is not moving actually. So when we talk about patriarchy, it has been, conceptualized as male dominance, heterosexuality, and financial supremacy. So it is the power and control over the, weak. So one reason being the power of patriarchy is arises out of the ascribed status that is by birth, or that is a biological relationship. It is same as, what we call it as a women by biological identity. But when we have to see the transformation of society progressing towards equality, it has to be seen from a pathway from how society moves from ascribed status to achieved status. Therefore, it is a patriarchy which need not define only as a harmful effect on women, but it is also harmful for men who would like to challenge the traditional authorities. Sorry, this some which actually. So when we talk about, emphasizing the traditional gender bias or stereotype challenging gender identities, I mean that there are many, though we don't see it, we don't talk about, but it is quite obvious that men have to be the earning member of the house. Men are not taught to be expressive of what or how they feel. They are taught how to be strong and not sissy all the time. Or emotional vulnerability is never taught to men, and that affects their mental health. And it is also says that, like, one is not man enough if they are not the decision making authorities in their house. And men are looked down upon for being emotional and sensitive because those are feminine qualities. And patriarchal teaching have also created discrepancies and wrapped notions about how men treat women. And men are never taught how to handle failure or rejection as well. So men are constantly expected to man up, quote unquote, even if it is the cost of their and others' well-being. So, when we see and culture burden and the understanding of patriarchy, the understanding of the patriarchy with diminishing masculinity and male honor, what we overall understand is the impact or the negative impact of patriarchy on other gender. However, if you see in detail, patriarchy is equally harmful within male and within the same gender, because it doesn't allow you to prosper, the freedom and choice within male as well. So patriarchy and violence against men, the laws being derived from patriarchy may be harmful in the sense because patriarchy do harm men as well, and not only women. So when we, define that, and there are also, everybody has already spoke about how they are, misusing the law. In India, it is also quite prevalent nowadays. I won't say prevalent, but it has, we are able to see that it has been, reported in the newspaper and all, that if there is a living relationship and if doesn't materialize, then they are charged, under the section rape. And if there is a divorce case, then, they may be put under the charges of dowry, or it is under domestic violence. So that is what happening. But what we understood, the violence against men and patriarchy, if we conceptualize them in 7 points, 7 forms of violence, that is noxious masculinity, poor self-determination, sexual aggression, and women-centric laws, emotional rejection, sexual abuse, and of course, health consequences. I'm not going detail into it because my previous speakers have already, talked about it. And if you see that, patriarchal violence, it is understood in 2 ways. That is oppression and inequality. Oppression through violence, and inequality, it is exclusively law protecting rights of equal particular gender and neglecting others. So just a second, let me, So while, gender-based crimes are socially constructed, the social system considers any act of crime as individual deviance. And however, when the state defines patriarchy as the condition that gives rise to the perpetrators, it is not the individual, but the institution that propagates biased justice by defining men as menans. And this state and society enculturation of bias further dissociate cohesion by differentiation rather than distinction between good and bad gender. So for example, it might be interesting to analyze how Indian Penal Code is worded around men. You can see that, section 375 of IPC, it's quote unquote, though I have not encoded because it's quite a long sentence. A man is said to commit rape. And under this section, rape is a crime that only see men as the perpetrator and women as the victim and not vice versa. Similarly, for another section 354A of IPC, man committing any of the following acts shall be guilty of the offense of sexual harassment. Or there is another section like 354 of IPC, any man who assaults or uses criminal force. Section 354 of the IPC, any man who watches or captures the image of women engaging in a private manner. Yeah, my last slides only. So this, this NGO is working in India, that is Save Indian Family Foundation, and they are working for men and their rights. And there is one study that was carried out in Haryana, in one of the districts, where it shows that there is 51% of men experiencing violence from their wives. And I would like to recommend, by concluding with the 4 recommendations. Of course, all the 4 recommendations needs to be validated with scientific studies, which I hope may emerge as one of the outcome of this conference. And the first recommendation is the how, towards elimination of gender bias and stereotypes. What can be the possible measures which a state can adopt and society can adopt? Maybe recommendation for state and society in general. Just 1 minute more. And the second is about implementing the uniform and sensitive laws for all. I think here we like to gender audit with respect to different budgets and financial audits. We should do a legal audit of which is gender neutral, or gender audit of all the judiciary across the world to understand what are the bias that exist within the judicial system across the world. The third is about the restructure traditional socializing pattern. And the last one, which I would like to recommend, is adopt gender neutral approach to human rights. So we need to distinguish what are the universal access and rights which are required, and which are the dedicated rights maybe for men and women, both which required to be inculcated in our policies and framework of human rights. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so Brenda,